Hi, welcome to Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV, Central Kentucky Television. Good evening, everybody. This is Kenny Fogle. Glad you could join us tonight. And we got a special guest in our studio stopping in Nelson County tonight and actually visiting Springfield as well and coming to visit us. And we really appreciate it. He's a state attorney general right now, but he's got a bigger job coming up here in a few months, and that's governor of Kentucky. So welcome, Jack Conway.
Oh, hey, Kenny. Thanks for having me. It's good to be on your show.
Well, I appreciate you being here. And I know it's busy. You got to be busy and taking time out for this. It means a lot to us. Again, campaigning. I'll just go into real quickly. That's got to be a full-time job, and so visiting all well, we're not going to say all 120 counties, but I'm sure you're going to make all of them.
Well, in my career, I've been to all 120 counties.
Yeah.
I can say that. It's and I make an effort to get to them in each and every campaign. Sometimes you can't always get there, but I certainly try to do that, Kenny. And it's I'm being the attorney general while also running for governor. I've got two little girls,
right.
and so I've got about 3 full-time jobs right now. But I'm enjoying it. I like people, and what a beautiful state we have, and it's so diverse, and our people are wonderful. So I'm just really honored and blessed. I'm really blessed to be the nominee in this race. I've been blessed to be Attorney General for the last 8 years, and I'm really looking forward to the last 75 days of this campaign. And I think there's a stark contrast between me and my opponent, and we're not overconfident, but we're going to work hard and hopefully earn a victory.
Well, before we get into any issues, I do want to ask you, at some point in your life, you decided you wanted to be a public servant. I mean, you could have been a lawyer. I mean, well, you were a lawyer, but you could have stayed in the private sector. But at some point, you decided, I want to be Attorney General, and later on, you want to be governor. What lit that fire?
It gets lit when I think I can make a difference. I've never had, Kenny, a great desire to hold a title. I've never really wanted to hold an office. If I see a job that needs to be done, I like to do it. In undergrad, I was a public policy major. I've always been drawn to policy and the way that government, while being fiscally responsible and while being in touch with the needs of the people, can actually make their lives better. And so I've had that since high school, actually. I had a teacher at St. X High School up in Louisville, John Price, who's still college, law school, whatever. He's still the best instructor I ever had. And I had him for geography, civics, and history, and he really instilled in me a love of our governmental system. So I've always carried that with me. And then I went to law school, and at a young age, I was legal counsel for Governor Patton and Deputy Secretary of the Cabinet under Crit Llewellyn. And they quite frankly saw in me something I didn't see in myself, and encouraged me to run for office, which I eventually did. In between, I've been in private practice and had a successful career as an attorney, and I've been Attorney General now for 8 years. And hopefully my tenure as Attorney General has made a difference in the lives of the people of Kentucky.
Is being in politics, is it sort of an ideology to you, or is it basically just you see a job and it needs to be done regardless of ideology, or how do you approach something? Do you have I know you don't have a set idea before you go into something.
Well, I mean, look, I'm a Democrat,
right.
And I don't run from being a Democrat. I'm a Democrat because I believe in job security, health security, retirement security. I think the Democratic Party overall does a better job of providing opportunity to all people. And I think we're the more inclusive party, and that's why I'm a Democrat. That having been said, I think I've earned a reputation for working with independents and Republicans. We've had to work with Republicans in the legislature to get heroin legislation passed to try to combat the scourge of prescription pills in the state. Our new cybercrimes laws that have allowed us to take over 800,000 child porn images off the internet during my tenure as Attorney General. I've got a lot of Republican friends. There's actually a committee out there called Republicans for Conway right now that's got some elected officials and business leaders, including Bill Samuels of Maker's Mark as part of that. So I've got a lot of Republican friends and have a lot of Republican support. So the way I answer that question would be to say, I know why I'm a Democrat, but I'm always willing to reach across the aisle to try to get things done. And neither party has a monopoly on the right ideas, and you got to be willing to sit down and talk and leave all that rhetoric to Washington D.C. If we do things the Kentucky way, we can get a lot of accomplished.
Well, speaking of the rrhetoric, obviously there's several issues that are real hot button issues, and one obviously being Connect. I mean, you read it just today in the Courier Journal, you see all the positives for Connect, how many new people are on insurance, but your opponent, I know he said day one, that's one of the first things he's going to dismantle. What would happen if we dismantled Connect?
Well, if we dismantled Connect and reverted to a federal exchange, as my opponent suggests, then what would happen is the fees that are charged on insurers are actually 3 times higher in the federal exchange, and you have to assume that would be passed on to customers. Additionally, when you have a state-based exchange, it makes it easier to enforce state consumer protection laws, which as Attorney General, that's something that I know about. And the big problem with my opponent is he sort of conflates the two issues. He talks about Connect and then talks about Medicaid and what we can't afford. And he's been very clear that immediately, if he were to become governor, he would take actions to undo the Medicaid expansion and dismantle Connect. And if he were to do those two things, he would kick nearly 500,000 people off of health insurance in this state. And Kenny, those are our brothers, sisters, friends, neighbors, parishioners. And what I am not going to do is what he would do. I am not going to kick 500,000 people off of health insurance. I do have questions. What can we afford in 2021? That's 6 years down the road, but the federal government's willing to work with the states. The expansion of health care coverage is generating more dollars into our state treasury. In fact, Governor Beshear, who has led us with distinction during some tough times, is currently planning on showing the people of Kentucky how health insurance expansion can pay for itself. And I look forward to working with him on that.
Okay. Well, and another big issue, obviously, when you look at the budget, I mean, and I don't envy you on this, because when anybody's dealing with the budget, it is tremendous. But the Kentucky retirement system, I mean, that's a big elephant in the room that the legislature has been battling back and forth for the last several years. Is there an answer to that? Is there a solution to fixing that, or is that something?
Well, I think most people in Kentucky don't realize what's been done over the last 6 years. I mean, in 2 separate occasions, they've changed the rules for current and future hires. So for current and future hires in the Kentucky system right now, if you join the retirement system, you have to work longer, make increased payments, no more retiring early and double dipping. And what we now have was recommended by the Pew Foundation on the states, which came in and made recommendations to Governor Beshear and to the General Assembly. And we've gone to a hybrid plan. It's part defined contribution, like a 401k, and it's part defined benefit, like we have now. And it's more sustainable in the out years. What happened was, over the last 10 or 15 years, we didn't make the actuaries' required payment into the system. In Frankfurt, they made assumptions. They thought the investments would go on forever. And then they didn't make the payments, and then the economy crashed in 2008, and we got behind the 8 ball. And what I say to people is, look, we've changed the rules going forward, but we didn't get in this mess overnight. We're not going to get out overnight. It's going to take about 15 years, and in each and every cycle, we're going to have to make that ARC payment, that actuarial required payment. And I'm committed to doing that. Next year, it's going to cost about $66 million more than it did in this last budget cycle. We've got to find the money, but I have a track record of doing more with less. As Attorney General, we actually increased civil collections by 600%, returned $300 million to the state treasury, and did it all while cutting our office's budget by 40%. And I'm confident we can find a stream of revenue going forward to dedicate to the program to keep it solvent. But we're going to have to be really prudent in the way we manage through this over the next.
Well, I know I've heard you on the stump talking a little bit about job creation. Exactly, how do you go about creating jobs? What role can the governor play in that?
Governor plays a huge role. First of all, the governor's got to let everyone know the state's open for business. And the governor has to be aggressive and looking at prospects and saying, come to Kentucky, look what we have here. We need to have every economic development incentive at our disposal if we can bring the jobs of the future here. And we have an opponent in this race who's actually said he doesn't believe in economic development incentives, which I have a hard time believing, but he has said he doesn't think it's a legitimate exercise of government's authority. But that's how we got Toyota here. That's how we got the UPS expansion up in Louisville. That's how we got some of the bourbon expansion along the Bourbon Trail. And so the governor has to, 1, create the environment, 2, make the pitch, 3, support educational systems that help train our young people and the workers for the jobs that are here. And as I'm running, what I'm trying to say to the people of Kentucky is we've got a skills gap in this state. There are many counties like the one we're sitting in right now where a lot of employers can't find the skilled workers they need. The next workforce development secretary is going to be just as important as the economic development secretary. So skills development and focusing on training workers is a big part of creating jobs, because when employers are thinking about coming to your state, all right, tell me about the quality of life. They want to know about the taxes, and then tell me about my workforce. And we've got to make certain that we have a workforce that has the skills that they need. But we also, when you talk about jobs in this particular part of the state where your viewers are, Kenny, the bourbon boom is remarkable. It really is. I mean, we have 3 times the production we had just a few years ago. Exploding payroll, nearly 750,000 people come into the Bourbon Trail. I want to make this part of the state to bourbon what Napa is to one, if you will. And the vision I have is of a tourism secretary who has a special relationship to the bourbon industry. As you move on down the bourbon
I like bourbon.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of horse farms around here
Yeah, we
too,
do.
and there are a lot of hospitality companies that could come build hotels, resorts with courtesy shuttles to take people out to see horses and to taste bourbon. You know, build golf courses along the way.
Exactly.
And yeah, so there's some resort and tourism opportunities in this part of the state that I'm really going to focus on as the next governor.
Well, one of the things I notice is big around here, and I don't know, is early childhood development. I mean, that's something I know that you've mentioned a time or two, and you say it's a stark contrast to your opponent on that. Exactly where do you stand on early childhood development?
Well, I'm for it.
You're pro early childhood development.
Kenny, I got 2 little girls, and you know, having children is a wonderful miracle. I'm so blessed, and you know, my wife and I have been parents. We've tried to read to them every night, and my kids have had access to preschool. But I know there are a lot of kids out there that are in single parent homes that don't have those opportunities. And there are studies out there that are conclusive that between the ages of 1 and 5, the amount of vocabulary a child is exposed to, the right kind of vocabulary, it's so impactful because the brain, Kenny, is literally wiring itself for lifelong learning. And that's why kindergarten readiness is so important. The child that's ready for kindergarten is the one that will test well in the 3rd grade, 6th grade, go on to be college and career ready. And I just hate it that we have children in very tender years that aren't getting the exposure to vocabulary and early learning opportunities that really set the stage for lifelong learning. And we have an opponent in this race who has said, he doesn't believe in early childhood education. He's questioned Head Start, said that it serves no purpose and kids forget it all by the age of 9. I think that's contrary to the science, and it's a big difference between me and my opponent in this race, and it's one that I hope your viewers and others will turn into.
Okay, well, before we get out of here, I know there's one thing the viewers, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, one of the things the Republican Party is doing, and they're doing it, it's not just here in Kentucky, but all across the United States, is basically trying to tie anybody in to an unpopular president in Kentucky right now, President Obama. Now, I know you've differed with him on the coal issue, for one thing. Is there a happy medium somewhere between what the federal government is proposing and what is good for Kentucky and the coal industry specifically?
Well, I look at being Attorney General of Kentucky or being hopefully the next governor as doing what's right for Kentucky.
Right.
And I'm the only Democratic Attorney General in the country to actually sue the president, sue the EPA over these new coal regs. And Kenny, what they did in proposing the new Clean Power Plan is they actually moved the goalpost. They actually changed the rules. They proposed something and then the final rule looked a heck of a lot different. And I'm not a global warming denier, but there are many, many things contributing to global warming. And I don't think that Kentucky's low cost of electricity is necessarily the top contributor. And keep in mind that we have very low electricity rates here. And it is the coal industry, that's a big part of it. Our generation keeps our costs low. And the reason we have so many auto plants here, we have so many aluminum smelters, we have so many steel companies here, is because we have low cost of power. And that helps us lure jobs here. And so my thing is that Kentucky is bearing a disproportionate burden in this whole debate. And when the EPA went about making this rule, they didn't do it according to their own statute. They exceeded their statutory authority. They've double regulated under several sections of the Clean Air Act. They did this largely in response to a lawsuit filed by some northeastern states who'd love to see our costs of power driven up. And we actually sued the EPA a time before over the regs the mercury regs that went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with us and said, you're right. And so I think our lawsuit has a good chance of being successful. And listen, this has not, there are a lot of people questioning why I did it, and this is an example of me putting people over politics, and I'm going to be the type of governor that always puts Kentucky first. And that's what I've done as Attorney General and what I'll continue to do as governor.
Well, 75 days before the election, is there anything that we need to get to the people of Nelson, Marion, and Washington counties you'd like to say, just primarily before we get out of here, just that I haven't covered yet?
No, just that it's been the great honor of my life to be the 49th Attorney General of Kentucky, and I think I'm ready for the job of governor. I think Sandy and I have a clear vision of where we'd like to take this state. We're fiscally responsible. As I mentioned earlier, we've cut our office's budget by 40%. We've done more with less. We've got a plan for economic development. If folks want to go to our website at conwayoverley.com, they can see our jobs plan that we've released. It's focused, a part of it's focused on building on Kentucky's strengths, and part of that is the Bourbon Trail. It is our unique location. We talk a lot about workforce development. We're going to be releasing an education plan that focuses on the entire spectrum of education, from early childhood to K through 12 to higher education reform and workforce development. So we've got a plan for the future of Kentucky, and I don't think Kentucky needs to take a U-turn and go back into some prior century. I think if we do things the Kentucky way, we can continue to move this state forward. And so I'm excited for the opportunity. I've got a great running mate in Sandy Overley. Sandy's someone who was a civil engineer and then also a lawyer, and got elected to the General Assembly and became the first woman in Kentucky history elected to House leadership. So Sandy's a real trailblazer, and she's going to be a real asset to our administration.
Well, Jack, we do appreciate you stopping here today, and like I said, I know it's been a long day for you, and you hopefully get home, get a little rest, and start all over tomorrow.
Well, I appreciate the time, and I hope your viewers enjoy the program, and I hope your viewers have a great day.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Jack Conway, State Attorney General, running for Governor of Kentucky. That's coming up in November, so we ask you to go out and do your part and vote when it comes around on Election Day. Again, this is Community Focus with Jack Conway. This is Kenny Fogle saying so long. We'll see you next time on Channel 6 TV. Take care, everybody.